have done it before. We are going to listen again, only the first speech. So thanks for coming. Thank you very much to your response. We are missing France and Italy today. I think they may be busy, but we have with us Caleta Holmes from AVA, association from Spain, south of Spain, Eduardo Miranda, which is the president of Alep in South Portugal, Fiona Campbell in Ireland, Andrea Chigo in Greece, and Merlin Carr in the United Kingdom. And the purpose of this meeting is to bring to all of us what are the options we have and how are the associations helping their networks. We are aware that only 2% of professional property managers are associated to networks. And I believe that in these specific difficulty times, we can see how important it is to be associated, to belong to a professional network that can bring the voice of the professionals to the governmental bodies. I think that there are some few examples we can bring during the conversation, but this is very important now to be part of a professional body, to keep reported, and also to be able to have options and information. So if you don't mind, I will start by alphabetic order on the intervention. So I have first Andrea, who I will give the word, and then you can present yourself and tell us how's the situation in your country. Andrea?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hi all. My name is Andreas Hiu, and I represent the Pasidaits, the Greek Association of Property Managers here in Greece. We are as country, are very lucky because we have only 46 deaths until now, and only 2,000 patients. And we are trying to keep it slow by accepting some government laws, like the lockdown, which started very early, 2 weeks ago. So everyone is locked down in the home for 2 weeks now, and this is why it was a solution to keep the deaths low. We started to platform. We present a platform to our property managers here in Greece to give their homes to doctors and some hospital managers to keep it to give it to them with no money. So we started this platform, and now it's very important that this platform is one of the best solution to have someone in Garadin. Because here in Greece, the hotels are closed. We closed the hotels 1 week ago. So the only solution to someone to have a home in order to be in Garadin is the vacation rentals. I think this was a big solution to all of us, because now we have we give our homes for these 2 months, March, April, and maybe May, for a monthly rental and not daily. This is the situation. Yes?
Did the Greek government prohibited the activity of vacation rentals up to a certain number of days, like for example in other countries? So you are allowed to keep your activity but not doing on a short-term period?
No. There is no any restriction. Here in Greece, the short rental activity is open.
And what was the level of cancellations you had in your country? Did you have a massive cancellations or how it was?
Yes, these 2 months, March, April, and maybe half of May, it was a massive cancellations because we closed the airports. That's why. So anyone from the Europe or USA or everywhere can't come here in Greece now. everything's closed.
Okay. Okay, what were the principal measures that the government, the Greek government, came out with? Did they provide you solutions? You have the unemployment suspension periods, or?
Yes, the companies, mainly for the companies, for the property management companies, they give 800 euros to each employees of these companies, because the vacation rental is off now. So they give 800 euros for each employee. This is the only measurement that the government took for our sector.
Okay. So as you were saying before, that most of you in the sector have converted your vacation rental short-term to long-term.
Yes.
Has this increased in the demand?
Sorry?
So you have converted most of the activity from short rental to long-term rental, and apparently, as almost everywhere, it's only national people, right?
Yes, of course, only 100%.
And what about the prices? Did they rise? Did they down? They were readjusted? Well, how was the formula?
Oh, we adjusted because it's an apartment of 30, 40 euro per day. And now it's only maximum 10 euros per day. You can find a lot of apartments with 300, 400 per month now.
Wow. That's really a big change, right? So what is the perspective of people in Greece? How do they see this crisis? Do they see it short-term, middle-term, or long-term? How are they optimistic? Are they pessimistic? Are they realistic? How are they looking at it?
Yes, they are optimistic because they think that Greece will be the most desirable place for vacation this summer, if everything is going well, because we had only 46 deaths now. We keep it low, so seems that Greece will not have the big problem like other countries in Europe.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Andreas. Do you want to add something additional, or I just go to Carlos? Maybe we can have a global debate afterwards, right?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Carlos.
So basically, the situation in Spain has been getting some support from the government. It's either through loans, like low undiscounted rates of low rate of interest with 1.5% for especially like tourist companies. Then there was some support as well for the employment for employees. So government on the alarm period is going to be paying up to 70% of the wages if they are reducing. And there are two options: either they get suspended and they don't go to work, or they get a reduction of the amount of hours. So we're just trying to work with the government. At the same time, they issue constantly decrees about how, because we are on lockdown at the moment, so nobody can be out of the houses by any reason. Only obviously for food or basic list of services and options with like maintenance, etc. And that needs to be through an authorization that you need to show to the police, etc. So there's a high level of control. They even now issue a decree where they're going to access our location through our mobile devices to know where we are and where we're going. We think obviously that's relevant to watch out to see like if after the state of alarm that decree is cancellation in terms of like all. Obviously, they're going to do all the privacy and respect all the privacy, but there are a few things that we just keeping an eye on. Because there are constant flow of new decrees coming out pretty much on a daily basis. We are requesting the government a flow of a dialogue with the industry. We're trying to have an active agenda and be very dynamic and be on constant communication with our politicians. As you said, I'm a member of the board in the National Federation, FEBITUR, here in Spain. I'm president of the Andalusian Association, ABA. And then what we're doing is we're coordinating and escalating down all the information and all the legal, basically all the legal commitment and all the legal requirements that the administration issue, and we making sure that that gets to every single property manager across Spain.
The activity in Spain has been suspended?
The activity has been suspended. Basically, it was forbidden. There were some cases where you could actually host people if they are on that. There are two options. Number one, you are on a list that is being issued by the government and is limited to a certain type of profile of people that you can host. It's like people who are delivering basic services, and there's a list of the companies or the profile of companies that can be providing those services. And again, it's obviously healthcare to like lawyers, but not all type of lawyers. All the lawyers that are looking after that that people is in the more needs, like people on the streets, etc. Obviously, as I said, maintenance, etc. So it's a very limited type of people, and some in logistics, etc. And those are the kind of people that we can host.
What about long term? Can you transform your business in a long term basis and skip the prohibition or the rules? Or
Legally, that's something we're doing in conversation with the government. Legally, not really, because once you've got a touristic license, you have to comply with the touristic accommodations law. So either you post or you cancel your license in order to do that long-term contract. What we're doing in the conversation is that we are able to host or to have as well a long-term contract for like 3 months, 1 year, as people is doing already, but then keep our license still on that during that period.
So for the moment, you cannot do it. Is that applied to all Spain or only specific areas? Because as you know, Spain has different regions.
Across Spain.
Okay, well, thank you, Carlos. You want to add something else?
That's fine. I'll go to the debate later. Thank you.
Okay. Eduardo Miranda from Alep.
Hi, is my microphone on? Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, hello everyone. I think the situation is pretty much the same. We have total loss of sales, meaning basically March and April, and now already May are completely lost with the cancellations. I think it's everywhere. The activity is not prohibited. In fact, it's in the list of activities that can be open. We don't have tourists, of course, but mainly we have tourists that stayed here and couldn't go home. Yes, a few, not many. We also have the doctors, and it's another project we are doing, but that's also for free, the doctors and professionals of health. I can explain after. But we are not closed officially. In terms of measures here, because the situation is getting very difficult, especially for the companies, because the small private owners, they can do something else like long-term or try to find another thing, and they don't have fixed cost. We have been working since the beginning. The first meeting with the Minister of Economy was with the tourist sector, and we are part of it. From the 12 big associations, we are considered one of them. And we managed there to get a direct line from microcredit for small owners, including private. You don't have to be a company. And that was very difficult because it's difficult to lend money for private people in this kind of situations. So we have a 16 million line that we managed for us and also for the other travel agents, for example, but was led by us, where they pay 200 they lend you 2,100 euros person, employee, or if you are self-employed, and it's immediately, it's online, and it's probably going in 1 or 2 weeks. The money, it was the first one to be operational. Besides that, there are also a big loan line with 900 million exclusively for the lodging sector. That means most of the money is going to the hotels, but 300 million from that goes to micro companies that is included short-term rental. And this is a low interest loan to pay in 2 or 3 years. But anyway, it's loan, it's not free money. Then they have some measures of layoff. That's the most important. That basically you suspend the work of some of the workers up to 4 months, 3 and an extra month, and you only pay 20% of the cost of the worker. And that is helping a lot of people, a lot of companies to keep alive today. And today they are discussing, for example, some kind of suspensions in the mortgage of commercial and non-commercial rentals for 3 months. But you have to pay after. I mean, they are suspending 3 or 4 months and you have to pay after. Other things that we are working directly. I've been negotiating with the City Hall of Lisbon for 4 months, and it's probably launching next month. And it was a coincidence, unfortunate coincidence, this COVID thing, a long-term migration campaign. So they have a special line supported by the government to promote housing. And we work together to create a special offer for short-term rental that want voluntary to change activity and go to long-term. Basically, they pay in advance 1 or 2 years of the rent. So it's quite interesting loan, especially now.
Who's paying that in advance?
The City Hall, they get money from the housing ministry. But what they do is that they rent from us. They are our renters, tenants, and then they sub-rent to families with a lower price. So, for example, in a one room, they pay us 600 euros per month, and they can sub-rent for whatever they want. But they pay 1 or 2 years in advance. That was what we asked. For example, they pay 7,000 or 15,000 euros in advance of rents. What's going to be very useful in these very critical moments for the people who want to migrate. We are doing the same with Oporto now also. And also what we are doing is this project also of giving houses for free for doctors, nurse, and all the health professionals that are involved directly in this fight against COVID. And we managed to get from the tourism authority, I negotiated a support for the basic cost. It's not much, it's 200 euros per month. It's about 7 euros per day, just to pay water, electricity, and gas. And also we pay the cleaning, meaning that we are the one who hire the cleaning to get a disinfection from a real disinfection, and so keep people safe. We are doing this with a group of entrepreneurs. They created a site. We have already put 300 doctors in homes in these last weeks.
Okay.
That's basically all.
Okay. Do you see internal movement from north to south? We have seen that in some countries there were what they have called the quarantine tourism. Some people getting out of the cities and going to the countryside, renting properties for long term, so stay locked, but in a rural area. Have you seen this phenomenon in Portugal, that people move out of Lisbon, out of Porto, and they go, I don't know, to maybe Coimbra or maybe or Algarve, other areas where there are more like countryside areas?
No, there is not in the sense, because there is at this moment in the state of emergency that was decreed here, there is a limitation of movement. You cannot even go to your country house or your beach house, even if you want it. In the Eastern, they prohibited everyone from moving. But what we have is people that are coming from other countries, ships that were stopped here and waiting for a plane, people in caravans, this auto caravans, they cannot go out of the country. So we are receiving a few of these people that cannot go out, and they need to do the quarantine. It's not a big segment, it's a small segment, but yes, but not from nationals, because the nationals, they cannot go around.
Understood. Thank you, Eduardo. Fiona.
Yeah, good to see you all. So we have had today the coronavirus bill passed, which just adds to the kind of some of the levels of protection that people in Scotland are getting. There's going to be protection from eviction and from debt collection, which is all very good news. Have I frozen, or is this okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. The Scottish government has introduced low interest loans. It is looking after various people. It's paying 80% of the salary of people that have been furloughed, which is great because we're trying desperately for people not to be made redundant, just to be furloughed at the moment. We have got all sorts of other support mechanisms, and I'm working really closely with the Scottish Tourism Alliance, and we're doing a massive amount of lobbying in terms of trying to get support for other industries, self-catering being a case in point. In their infinite wisdom, the Scottish government excluded us from any grant support last Tuesday. So I've had the week from hell, as you can imagine, and my inbox has been absolutely jumping with people saying, why aren't we getting any support? On Friday, they announced that we will have to evidence financial, that it will be our primary source of income, which is almost impossible. So essentially, there's a lack of parity between the UK government and the Scottish government in how we're being treated as a sector. There's also a lack of parity that we are the only sector in the entire UK that is going to have to give any form of evidence in order to gain a grant. But I'm getting good news today. There's been movement in Scottish government on the back of a massive lobbying campaign by my membership. And I think that we might have good news by the end of the day. So lobbying is working up here. It's just taking forever. So we're now looking at kind of other people. We're looking at small B&Bs, micro businesses, limited companies and self-employed people that are currently being completely ignored and left out of any support. But as I say, Scottish government is listening, and we're kind of making some really good progress at the moment on that. We've also asked for a moratorium on all sort of utility bills and debts because, frankly, the tourism industry in Scotland is fundamentally insolvent now. And we need to actually act a little bit quicker than we are so far. But, you know, these things are unfortunately taking time. All self-catering or short-term let activity has been suspended in Scotland. You are not allowed to do it. We are on the list of closed businesses. I'm now struggling to get any guidance in Scotland to do with the possibility of key workers being accommodated, or indeed stranded nationals and people that are stranded here still. The difficulty is lots of companies are popping up offering short-term letting as accommodation for these sectors, but there's no guidance on who should be doing it, could be doing it, how it should be done. I had a long conversation with Airbnb yesterday, and I basically said, right, I have massive concerns about places where it's not an entire building. So, you know, if you're in places like Edinburgh, where there's short-term letting has already got a dreadful reputation and we're already struggling with it, how is somebody going to feel in a building if the neighbour suddenly becomes a high-risk key worker and they're having to open the front door, potentially infecting the entire building? Now, Airbnb in their infinite wisdom has decided to push ahead with the scheme anyway, but I am still working with Scottish Government on getting some guidance. I totally understand that short-term letting is a really good way to deliver this accommodation, but I think it really needs some guidance and consideration. Otherwise, we're going to end up in big difficulties going forward, both reputationally and in terms of health. So that's kind of my next activity here. We're still doing technically not too badly. We've had 47 deaths, 1,563 confirmed cases. We are on lockdown. There are people that are being irresponsible and still, you know, going out and about, but the police are now out and about basically telling you to go home. There's been a huge backlash against people going to places like Skye and the Highlands to self-isolate, but a lot of those people have basically been kicked home. So that's what's going on in Scotland. But yeah, I'm really concerned about the tracking devices in Spain. That does not sound cool at all. I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. It seems that, yeah, absolutely, no one had a plan. I think that one of the things we find out at the international level, no country was ready for such a situation. I think not even Steven Spielberg would have imagined that the world was going to turn at home everywhere. But definitely, you said something very important, which is lobbying. Lobbying at the institutional level is very important to be heard by the authorities, because our sector, which is a very important sector in many countries, has been reduced to very small, but in some cases, like I would say, where the association is working very closely with the government, direct line, so they have been taken into account. But in other countries, perhaps also in the UK, there is been activity. So, Marilyn, can you explain us what happened there in England?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of things. The first thing is obviously the government has taken a number of measures. The first one is the furlough program that Fiona mentioned. That applies obviously to our sector as well, and it means that any company who has people going on to furlough has 80% of their salaries paid. So that was an immediate relief to everyone in the industry. Following on from that, we have also gained additional guidance from DCMS that where companies are having staff volunteer to place NHS and key workers in homes, they're allowed to do that while on furlough. So that allows us to be doing the right things while we have staff on furlough and providing that that kind of grant from the government. Secondly, there are loans. The biggest issue and what we're continuing to lobby for is that while the loans are there and some people are starting to get loans approved, many of the banks are requiring personal guarantees from owners, which obviously then, what's meant to be a government-backed scheme, the risk is being transferred over to owners of businesses in a very uncertain time. So we're continuing to lobby that those personal guarantees should not be required when the government is backing 80% of the value of the loans to banks. And we think it's really worrying that banks could be protecting themselves in this world and coming out of this when other businesses are having to take significant risk. So that's kind of a second thing where, it's positive, the amount of loans that they're projecting, et cetera. But obviously, there are still some challenges with the implementation of that. On that side as well, hospitality companies that have what's called a rateable value of a different range here are actually going to be receiving grants of £25,000. Also business rates, which is kind of the tax you pay for your location. There's a holiday depending on, again, the size of the company. So it's targeted at smaller businesses. And those things are available to many of the smaller companies in the industry. So that is a real positive. The other thing that we have been working very heavily with government on is the difference between companies being allowed to provide credits or vouchers versus refunds. And the tourism department is speaking with the transport minister who owns that policy. And we are expecting to see some guidance coming out from government, which would allow companies to be refund, or would be allowing companies to give vouchers or credits rather than refunds to protect liquidity in the market. So those are kind of the main government areas. What is also important for us is that we launched as an industry NHS Homes, which is basically a program similar to what's being done in Portugal. We have now, I don't know the latest number, but in the hundreds of doctors, nurses, etc., being placed in homes. We now have more than 10 companies signed up and new companies joining every day from across the country. And we've managed, with the support of some developers, etc., who've donated their time for free, to actually get the site up and running, to have an admin site behind it, so that doctors and nurses can be allocated to different companies to manage it through their own processes. And the government is extremely supportive of us being able to run that program and to operate on that basis. We have up on the UK Short-Term Accommodation Association website the pledge. So every company who's doing NHS homes has to sign up to a pledge that they're only charging very minimal costs. So like the cost of basic utilities and the cost of the cleaning to, of course, pay those cleaners who need to feed their families. And hopefully that will help also some of the supply chains to remain with a minimal level of activity over the period. I have to say, as a company owner myself, I've been really pleasantly surprised with how many owners have just said, I want to be a part of the program. I want to give my home for free. I want to help out. To hear the stories of the doctors and nurses, people who have, their partners undergoing chemotherapy and they can't risk, infecting them, but they want to continue working and all these kinds of things. So absolutely incredible. So that's been really positive. The government position on our industry is that it is allowed to still take bookings, but only when it's for essential travel. And what we've been seeing is that the people who are booking are because they're stuck there. So people who, aren't going to return to Iran right now, for example. Also key workers, obviously, self-isolation, but also, as I discussed with the ministers, there is also the risk that when everyone's in lockdown, issues of domestic violence and all these other things can increase when people are stuck. So just making sure that there are places that people can go and stay if needed in whatever local circumstances, that those places are available and can be booked. Obviously, we've seen massive drops. Bookings are down between 70 to 90% across our industry body, the companies involved. So everyone's feeling the hit. There are reports of landlords moving to long-term rentals and an increase or a surge in long-term rentals being advertised. And yeah, I mean, those I would say are some of the key trends.
I would ask you, what about the price? Are prices going down or they are maintaining the prices, the companies? Not for those who want to participate in that program that you recently
the prices are going down across the board. I mean, it depends really on the companies. What you can see, for example, a week ago, I was talking to a service department company that wanted to be a part of the program, but wanted to charge £110 a night for a studio in London. And I laughed at him saying the NHS is never going to pay that amount of money. And a week later, he's coming back saying, what can they pay me? I'll take anything. So I think everybody's going through that kind of, curve and just saying, well, look, what is a price that people can pay? In the UK, there is a kind of a rate that the NHS are kind of known to pay, which is for hotels, typically £45 per night per room. And what we're trying to do is secure funding from the government for the NHS Homes program, that they would pay for short-term rentals the same rates that they're paying to hotels. So we're in discussions with DCMS and in discussions also with the NHS about getting that government support so that we're able to open up as many homes as possible to support the program.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Madeline. Victoria?
Yes, sorry, it took a while to unmute myself.
Okay, can you explain to us a little bit how is the situation in Finland, right?
No, I'm based in Brussels, so I'm in the capital of Europe, as they say. I I'm based in Brussels, and I monitor, the EU policy affairs that are related or can or may be affecting short-term rental industry. And I also work with the EU institutions here, which are obviously on the lockdown, as all of you are. By now, all member states apply restrictions to people movement. And to contain the spreading of the virus, on the 16th of March, European Commission recommended to member states to apply a temporary 30 days coordinated restriction of non-essential travel from third countries into the EU. And following the endorsement of the EU leaders, all member states and all Schengen associated countries such as Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland are now applying all this travel restriction. So obviously we cannot do anything when it comes, to the travel restrictions, but I think what we can do, and thanks to you, we can brace ourselves by talking to each other, cooperating, and asking for a financial aid, state aid. And obviously, if it is possible, helping everybody to go through this crisis. So, for example, hosting medical workers or other workers who have critical occupations and they must exercise their free movement. So at the EU level, Commission is working hard every day. I'm sending many news flashes to HHA members. They probably hate me by now that I'm sending so many emails. But so there are a lot of things going on, and in general, European Commission is trying to mobilize the EU budget. And so that there could be that this EU budget could bring some immediate relief to the hard-hit SMEs and especially the tourism sector. What is interesting that even when it all started, the European Commission immediately said that tourism is the sector which is the hardest hit sector, and all the support and member states should look at it and to help tourism players to somehow cushion the shock which they're having now because of the coronavirus outbreak. So, as I said, there are a lot of initiatives going on, but I think the most important thing is to say that the biggest financial contribution will be coming from the member states' budget, even though Commission for example, is trying to mobilize the EU budget. For example, I think they are pulling together 8 billion from the EU budget. They are still, Commission is also working that member states would be able to use the underspent structural funds. So this will equal to 29 billion of euros. So this initiative is called Coronavirus Response Investment Team. So again, when we talk all about this money, we should talk about the money coming from the member states. There's also the state aid initiative, and Commission made the rules very flexible, because in general, states cannot, provide any aid to separate companies. But in this time, during this unprecedented time, Commission made it possible so that the national governments could be or would be able to give this financial aid to companies which are having this crisis. And I think what is impressive to see during these days, that Commission, when you think about the legislative procedure at EU level, usually takes years until something is being done. While now it takes a matter of probably hours to, so that the things would be confirmed. So, for example, if Spain is notifying of their state aid scheme to the Commission will very likely approve the state aid the next day. So it's happening super fast. And I think at the HHA level, European Holiday Home Association level, I think my advice to all property managers, of course, regardless of staying positive, safe, and kind to each other, is to turn to national trade associations, because people working at national trade associations, they are the real professionals, because they very likely have the information about the national temporary financial measures imposed to support directly affected by the coronavirus outbreak businesses, which is property managers. And if these measures are not yet in place, again, national associations are the right channel to transmit the messages. So associations will also give property managers a channel to collaborate with their peers to discover that they are not alone in this chaos. And obviously associations, they have an ability to learn things and of course translate these learnings into action rapidly. And I think this is the ultimate competitive advantage. You know, and I like the quote of Yogi Berra. He's the US baseball player and coach. He said that the future is not what it used to be. So I think this suits very well what we're having today. And I think what is the most important is that we need the cooperation to create the future, which suits us all in every region of the European Union. And I remember also somebody said that when the life gives you lemons, make a lemonade. So I think if we work together, we can make a lemonade.
Okay. Thank you very much, Victoria, for this feedback. I think we all should learn a lot of things out of this crisis. I think there will be a lot of big opportunities, and definitely during this crisis, we have seen the best side of this of some people and the worst side of some people too. We have seen some behaviors that were unacceptable in many aspects, like some business properties or some business getting into panic and start firing people. We have seen other people showing a huge amount of solidarity. There is a lot of big lessons to learn about this crisis. And I think that once this will go on, we will all have the opportunity to evaluate how, where, at what level our institutions were. You said two key words, which are that obviously member states had to take the majority of the responsibility of what's going on. So somehow a lot of the European citizens, they have seen how the European values, the European project has been, I would say, somehow of damage on their image. Obviously, everybody values the reactions of institutions, but I think that we have seen how each country look on their sides, and there were some countries locking the customs, some other countries locking borders, some other countries taking advantage. But somehow it seems that most of the countries were coordinating by the same measures because they were following guidance from the World Health Organization. So coming up to here, I would like to ask you a question. And this is a very important question because I believe most of us created at least three scenarios: in the very short term, in the middle term, and in the long term. So I'm going to ask you, what about short term? When do you think, nobody knows the answer, obviously, when this is going to be ended, but let's put ourselves that the short period or the short strategy will be up to June, which is what the majority of the countries are saying, that the healthy crisis will may be ended by the end of May, beginning of June. So what is the scenario up to June? What if June is not solved and we just go to November or whatever? And the worst scenario, what if we cannot change our quarantine periods in countries if not until a vaccine comes out? So let's create the scenarios. Let's see what we can do as professionals in this sector and what should we get ready for, because obviously things that you all of you brought in here is very important, is the reality. What you have described is the absolute reality. I believe we need to be very realistic with the situation before you're making your plans. The reality must be there. So no fake expectations, no optimistic expectations. The reality is there. The reality, it's a bit hard, but still is. There was movements and there were very positive things coming out of that. But how do you see, and now everybody's free to talk, in short term? What is the scenario you're facing in short term?
I mean, I'll kind of start, and I'll just kind of speak to both of those things very quickly. I think in the short term, it's about making sure we've got the right government support, that no one is making rash decisions. And I think that's really what we've been trying to advocate for here. The things like the employee retention scheme help us to do that. But of course, if all of a sudden we just drop off another cliff on the 31st of May when the current, when the current scheme is projected to end, that's not going to solve the problem. So it's about a measured and probably longer term approach. But obviously, we recognize government needs a bit of time to get their heads around those things. So I think in the short term, it's all about providing that liquidity to the market, providing no rash decisions, and allowing companies to stay afloat. In the medium term, it's about making sure that any measures are extended to allow time for a recovery. Also, I think, it's important that companies in our sector are seen to be doing the right things. So, we really do believe that schemes like NHS Homes or the one in Portugal and others are really important to showing the value of the sector and how we can help in the time of crisis, even when as businesses we're suffering. And I think longer term, and I'm American born, optimist by nature. I would love to think we're coming out and we can still have some sort of a summer. But I have to say, in this particular instance, I think we've got to be prepared that we're going to have a very tough year. And that it may be looking at, hopefully by next summer, things might be starting to look a little bit more normal again. So I think as businesses and as associations, we've got to be helping companies to prepare, not just for a short-term solution, but actually an industry that may not recover in full for potentially up to a year, maybe even longer. And how we can do that, whether that's flexibility and being able to do longer rentals, whether that is, just looking for other opportunities, but also working together with our owners to make sure that, we still have the industry at the end of this, in the homes available that people want to be booking and all these types of things. So there's a lot of things I think to think about. But unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be a quick solution. And I think it's a hard path ahead.
Well, when you said about not a quick solution, obviously you're thinking about bringing things back to time as they were before the crisis. But I don't think that scenario is realistic, at least in 1 or 2 years' time, regarding the volume of bookings and the movements, etc. I think we all agree that the international countries, they have closed borders, and international mobility is going to be reduced a lot in a very long period, not until we have a vaccine and the health system is recovered. Totally agree with that. And probably the sector will not come back to as it was in a long-term period. But I was talking more in a short term and a middle term, like, for example, when this crisis, at least the healthy crisis, will come to the end. So it's not going to be definitely a free mobility as it was before, neither. It's going to be done gradually. But somehow, I believe that people will need to go away from their homes. They are locked down on their properties and they may want to move on holidays, keeping some restrictions as they are now, like social restrictions and whatever. But the economy, I'm not sure that all the countries can allow themselves to keep these measures by government during a year, for example. So it may be 4, 5, 6 months before the economy collapses. So it's kind of hard to predict, but looks like in a middle term, maybe some countries are expecting to have some, let's say, 30%, 40% of bookings for summer in some areas, all local, so no expecting any international travels, but some activity may happen during this period of time. Do you agree with that vision, or you think it's going to be? Yeah.
I think certainly in Scotland, which everybody's got different markets, but in Scotland I actually see this as in terms of mid to longer term. I think that our sector in terms of accommodation provision is most certainly going to pop up the strongest and the fastest. We've got huge amounts of area and lots of fresh air, and people are going to be able to, people are, as you say, going to be desperate to get out of their houses, desperate to get out of the cities, to go and get the fresh air. We offer such an immediate option for that. It's good value, it's clean, it's fresh, and you can carry on with the social distancing techniques. So dare I say, I see a huge opportunity for our sector going forwards in Scotland.
I would say that it's also, like, in the short term, we definitely gonna have to bet on our national tourism. That's for sure. There's gonna be a high level of unemployment, then there's gonna be a very tough market also for the real estates. They might bring also good opportunities as well. But then it's going to be a readjustment, I would say, that is going to be affecting. I mean, what's going to happen in the real estate market will be affecting also the short estate rental, which eventually, if we stay positive, is going to help to mature the market. So whatever holiday rental is out there is going to be definitely a competitive one. And eventually a more professional one, because we got a legislation. Again, all the different associations we're doing, and we're using this time to have a very strong contact and conversations with our different governments. And I think we building a stronger relationship more than ever. They saw that we can help the administration with their tough times, like helping doctors, etc. So we send a message of a united industry. And that's very relevant. So the role of the association is definitely going to help to that process, to mature the market. Saying that, it does still look like, obviously, we're definitely not going to be back to the same numbers or the same ADRs and figures that we were having pre-coronavirus crisis. But then again, the short term would be definitely national tourism, and then we will need to see how the different outbound markets, especially for Spain, are going to be reacting and evolving on the whole crisis.
Okay, and you said something interesting. The size of the market will definitely be reduced. Do you think this will affect private owners rather than professionals? Would this maybe an opportunity for professionals to enlarge their capacity inside the market? And this is an open question to all of us. What do you think about what happened with the OTAs movements? Did they contribute to the massive failure of our industry or some professionals by reacting by themselves? Do you think they will contribute as well to, or they are essential to gain back all the activity in the sector?
Frankly, I hope none of them exist after this. They've behaved absolutely reprehensibly. In Scotland, the absolute vast majority of our sector is made up of private individual operators and businesses. And the OTAs, having just unilaterally overridden all of our cancellation policies, has resulted in people literally from going from a status where they've spent the low season doing up the kitchens, doing up the houses, getting ready for a professional, vibrant season coming up. There are no reserves, and now the OTAs are unilaterally deciding that everybody gets a free refund. That can be deposits that we've been holding for a couple of months, and they're now being refunded. We do not have the reserves to pay these things back. It's been absolutely disgraceful what they've done. And frankly, there's a lot of very, very, very angry people. And I've had discussions with Booking.com and Airbnb and Expedia and all these people. And I've explained that to them. And I said, you've done a brilliant thing in terms of PR, in terms of paying the guest back. But you are destroying small businesses across the whole country and across the whole of Europe and indeed the world. And they can't really come up with an answer for that. So it's a conversation. And as I said to Booking.com, you've done a brilliant job, because guests will always now want to book through an OTA because they know that they'll always get a refund. But you may find that you don't have any properties or partners by the end of this.
I think that two things coming out of what you just saying, Fiona. That's number one. There's some platforms that they realize what they did and they try to make some amendments. One of them today actually issued a 25% refund that is going to be happening next month in April.
Yeah, but that is largely 25% of very little in many cases. I mean, I get that they're trying to do something. I do get that, but it's not. When you look at the detail,
it's not not relevant, that's for sure, but it's one step. At least they realize they made the wrong approach or the wrong unilateral regulation, as you said. But then again, it's like what we need to understand is that you are a marketplace and you are a platform. You gather together supply and demand. There's going to be always the toughest decision to make. Someone is going to miss there, and what the industry was telling us, I mean, the information that we were getting from property managers in the association and in the national federation is like basically the concern that you just mentioned. But then at the same time, we are partners in the house, so I think this crisis needs to help us to build those bridges and to have that conversation, to have maybe a rep or someone from the platform that can help us and then set measures to help us throughout this crisis. Because this just started, let's say, and it's a long and tough and dry way ahead. So we probably have to work together and find solutions on how, and if they did that, if they did some corrections already, maybe we can find other ways for them to react. So I think that's, yes, it was really tough because it took away all the liquidity that was for especially SMEs and private owners. But then there's also an opportunity as well, maybe for national platforms, for other platforms that were actually in danger due to the amount of money that these huge platforms are having. So, I understand this, but I think we have to remain positive, be open to dialogue, and maybe look at the eventual opportunities, the opportunities that might come out of this.
Okay. Eduardo, what do you think about the short-term, long-term, middle-term? How do you think this is going to affect? Do you think that there are possibilities for some property managers to keep on having meetings for summer, or at least late summer? And how do you see this is going to be reactive?
Okay, sorry, but I have just 5 minutes. I'll try to be brief here. I think we are in a time of survival plan. I mean, being very honest, there is absolutely no new bookings coming now, and we are only dealing with cancellations. So it's not a time to plan promotion, what's going to happen next. The greatest question here is, if this is a 3 months, 4 months problem, I mean, up to the middle of summer, that I doubt it, in terms, internationally speaking, this is a plan to survive, maybe with a loan, with cutting some costs, and we can deal with that. The greatest problem is that if this stands up to summer, goes over summer, then we have a lost year, because then we can only come back on March, April, especially the areas that have a very low winter. And absolutely no company is prepared to have 1 year of cost fixed. So what I see here is that the small owners, individual owners, that they have some flexibility, like in the urban areas, they may change for 1 year, half a year from business, long term, mid-term, they're looking already for the mid-term, and eventually they can look for other activities and come back whenever they need. The problem will be with the professional companies, with the especially the property managers. They can cope with 3 or 4 months, but with 1 complete year, and I'm really afraid that with the loans, they get in debts and they cannot pay back again if this goes on and on and on. So I think everyone has to have a plan into May and June and reevaluate the situation in June, because if this is going to be up to October, November, especially in the urban areas that will only be open when the whole international market is going to be open, we depend a lot of the international tourists, then they have to reevaluate, and maybe they have to destructure and almost shut down the company, taking all the cost fix out and eventually come back next year with a new company and restructure the whole company again. Otherwise, they won't survive it, or they will lend so much money they could never pay again. So it's going to be a hard period, and maybe some local destinations like Algarve we have here that have a lot of national clients. If the situations in Portugal gets better, and although you're still closed, maybe they get some clients like you have in China now. But for urban cities, this is the last year if we pass summer, and nobody can resist if you have big cost fix a total year. So there have to be a plan B, and the plan B is going to be very, very hard. I mean, very hard. We have to rethink the business and reconstruct the business again if you are alive again in the spring. It's not going to be easy.
Eduardo, I have a question for you. Sorry to interrupt. When you said that you came to an agreement with local city councils, like you did in Lisbon or in Oporto, that you did an upfront payment of a 2 years rent. How is that kind of agreement? Are you doing like also like a symbolic or like a super low budget rent agreement, and then they cast sublet? How is that exactly working?
This was a coincidence. It was nothing to do with COVID. Now it's changing because of COVID, but they wanted to promote housing, and they wanted us to help the migration from housing to short-term rental to housing, a volunteer migration, because the offer is good, not because they are obliged to, and because the market has a lot of competition. It was good for us to take the pressure out of housing and to help them doing that. So we help on working with the proposal. And the proposal, they have levels for 1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, how much they can pay for the rent. For example, 600 for 1 room. And we get an extra 10% for having the decoration and all this. And we convince them, because they have the money, the city halls, to advance 1 year or 2 years of rent, because it gets very attractive. And also people are a little bit afraid of not receiving the rent from the city, of delaying the payment. So with 1 year, they're completely secure, and it's a front cash. So it gets very attractive. And if you get hundreds or maybe 1,000 people going to long term, the pressure from housing is going to be much lower, especially next year that we have elections.
Okay.
I see a very interesting point of view, especially from different areas. We should take into account that vacation rental in general, holiday lettings, they are different areas. You have vacation areas, you have urban areas, and you have traditional countryside areas, or skiing, mountain, etc. So I am seeing from different people making plans, depending where the sector they are, they see things are completely different around. The beginning of vacation rental started long time ago on summer areas, beach areas, where the properties were rented by weeks, by months, and sometimes even longer. And this was the beginning of this activity. Obviously, this is affecting too much to urban areas, where they definitely substitute hotels activity in some cases. But in those areas, in vacation areas, in holiday areas, what I see is that they can do some step backwards to where they were before, and they used to survive with a very seasonal located timings. Indeed, those areas are seasonal. So truly, I see, Eduardo, what you're saying in plan A, B, up to summer and after. Truly, this is going to be affected. I think that mobility is going to be restricted a lot, especially international mobility. So big cities that they have a huge amount of bookings coming from tourists may drop down, but tourism itself will continue at a local level. And I also think that some summer areas will not suffer probably as much as urban. So when we do our predictions, we need to take into account that there are some different sectors where particularities are different. So just to end, because we all have some time, and I want Andreas to give a final feedback, as you are more from a holiday area and your vision was more short-term optimistic. Do you think that if the healthy crisis is solved by the end of May, some countries like Greece, Portugal, Spain, those who are receiving tourists will have a chance to keep at least 50% of the bookings?
Yes, I think this is much realistic. 50% is a lot of, it's very realistic, because as I hear here, the people is locked in their house for a long period, so they need desperately to go out, to go for vacation. And countries, Mediterranean countries like Spain, Portugal, and Greece will have, I think, a massive tourism for this year. And here in Greece, we have we have two kinds of vacation rentals. We have the whole year vacation rentals and the season that works on the islands for 3 or 4 months maximum. And we started last year to work on a program for these vacation rentals, the vacation rentals in the islands, to give their homes, their rental to students for the winter. So this is a program that's going very well. So a vacation rental on the island, working for like a short-term vacation rental for 2-3 months, June, July, August, and from September to May is turning to a long-term, mid-term vacation rental to students, because there are a lot of universities in the islands. And this is a kind of a solution for this kind of vacation rentals. The problem will have the vacation rentals working whole year in the big cities like Athens and Thessaloniki, etc. And there will be a big problem there, I think. And we try to find some solutions, like to extend the period for these vacation rentals with some commercials. We're working with the Minister of Tourism to make some commercials for the winter tourism in Greece, and we'll hopefully see that they likely want to give some money to this promotion.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Carlos. Obviously, Eduardo, Victoria, Merrily that just left the room. Thank you very much for your contribution. We are posting this video conversation now in our website. I will try to invite you again in 1 week's time to maybe comment some advancements. I think now we are in the time where Italy and Spain will start by mid-April to see how infections goes down. Let's see how governments they react, and apart from there, we will have a clear idea on how this is going to happen. I'm pretty happy about the of this meeting. I have seen how in different countries different strategies, and I have just realized what you were saying at the last moment, Andreas, how the sector is going to be transformed, and I clearly see that the transformation will come from different segments. So urban is a segment, holiday beaches is another, mountain and ski is another, and evolution is going to be totally different in each of them. I think this is a huge word. And somehow, when you were saying this, I was thinking about there are a lot of problems of the rentals they have in big cities that may going to be solved by the transformation of the sector right now, just to this crisis. So it's much more clear for me now the future segmented into different sectors and see how the evolution will be. Just to end. Myself, I'm also consider myself someone positive, but very realistic. And my vision at this moment is that not until the health crisis will be solved, you cannot see more clear future. But health and scientists are now working, and I think that the health crisis will be ended by end of June, probably. or end of May, beginning of June, middle of June. Once it be solved, everything will come back to normal little by little. So businesses will start running again and the economy will catch up. Most of our property managers, professionals are family companies. So they come from well-structured companies, and those they can hold the crisis. All those other types of companies who are businesses in strict term may not resist because they only based in numbers. But family companies, they can their support, their pillars are family members, so they will have I would say longer period. Obviously, they will all suffer. But, let's be and that means optimistic because the future is not that dark. Anyways, no one has the truth and no one knows what is going to happen. But in mid-term, I would be optimistic and real, especially for holiday areas rather than urbans. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your attendance.
Thanks so much. Take care all. Bye.
Good.
Bye.